think I was looking for some sort of relationship with people who believed in Christ and who had that, and I found it here. I found people who were very loving and very caring.
The Methodist Church is my home, and I'm of course partial to it.
The fellowship of the church, of course I'm a little bit prejudiced, but I don't think you'll find better fellowship anywhere than.
And I think that spirit of fellowship and the closeness that we had really were the core of this church and helped get this church kicked off to what it is today.
This church it's family. It's our kids both live in California, and this is the closest thing to family we have in Pensacola.
I love this church. I love this church. Looks like a God's church. When I'm riding down 9 Mile Road, I see that steeple high above the trees, and it just gives me a feeling of peace.
I was appointed here to the Pensacola District in 1981, and we had a very active district committee on missions, and they were looking for sites to establish new churches. And some of the places that at that time that were under consideration were Navarre and Lillian and Pea Ridge and 9 Mile Road. I had a gentleman from the Board of Missions to come down and project growth areas for us. And he said that by the turn of the century, that 9 Mile Road would be one of the primary arteries for travel. He called it the hub of Escambia County. Two people were really instrumental in helping us to buy the property. One was Mr. Gene Creel, who was the chairman of our District Board of Missions. And another was Barbara Odom, who owned the Odom Realty Company. We bought it for $155,000, which was a very high price at that time. In fact, I think it was the most that we had paid for a lot for a church in the Alabama-West Florida Conference at that time. The first service that we held, or the first meeting that we held, was in the AmSouth Bank. And that's where we had a group of people come together who were interested in building a church, locating a church in this area. There were probably 15 to 20 people, best I remember. That's been a few years ago, and sort of taxes my memory to think back that far. That meeting was started off in a very inauspicious way. We were meeting there, and the lady who is still a member of this church and a charter member, Jackie Saxon, worked for AmSouth Bank at the time, and she got us permission to meet there. And when we gathered that evening, we went into the bank, and for some unknown reason, the alarm system had not been turned off. And the alarm went off, and the first thing we knew, that we were surrounded with police cars. So that was a very unusual beginning for that meeting. Of course, after that, we had to buy the property. We had to locate and then purchase the property, which we did. And then we had a first service in the funeral home right down the street. And I remember I preached at that first worship service, which was on the fourth Sunday in May in 1985. Then at conference that year, we appointed the first pastor to this church. And the church has just grown since then and has really become one of the dominant churches, you might say, in our denomination in this area. The reason I named the church, I suggested a name rather to the District Board of Missions, St. Luke. And the reason I did that was because St. Luke's one of my favorite characters in the Bible, and he was a physician. And I thought it being near West Florida Hospital that it would be appropriate to name it St. Luke. So I hope that name has borne well through the years.
Well, no, it wasn't really scary. We just felt that there was a need for it. We knew that we wanted a place out here to worship and fellowship, and we just figured we would do it. It wasn't, most all of us had been very active in churches of our own and for many years, and we just decided we wanted to do it. We'd have anywhere from 10 to 25 people come, and we met everywhere. Bob Keys and I believe it's Cedar Lawn Funeral Home was kind enough to let us be in his chapel. The West Florida Hospital let us use a room on the upper floors there. And we were also able to meet out at West Florida. They permitted us to. And the old Mutual Federal, which is now AmSouth, permitted us to have some organizational meetings and there. And we had some interesting times meeting in just everywhere like that. But as I already have said, the Pensacola District Board was acquiring the property, and so it was not like that we were going to have to go out and seek property. We pretty much knew where the building was going to be. It was a matter of getting started and moving forward. We used to have Sunday school classes in some of our homes. We'd meet in the minister's home. They met in my home, and we would all meet together. And I used to help fill in and teach Sunday school classes when we didn't have them divided up. Then as soon as we could build a Sunday school room, which is now the fellowship hall, then we were, which that was not Sunday, that was the sanctuary first, but that gave us the little building for Sunday school rooms, and we had little nooks around where people could start meeting, and we began to develop a Sunday school class, and people sort of divided up according to their interest and age groups. And then someone stepped up and become the Sunday school superintendent. All during this time, the people that were really active in building the church, they had all been in the church.
In this area, and I had seen the sign out on the property for really a couple of years. It said that a United Methodist Church would be built here, and I was attending another local United Methodist Church, but this one was closer to my house, and I also felt that it would be very exciting to be part of a new church. I had not done that before in my life and thought that would be very exciting. With the church being small, it was a tight-knit fellowship. Practically everyone came to the Wednesday night fellowship dinners. Everyone was involved in all the activities of the church. We had some sport activities, recreational type gatherings, and it seemed like that everybody was there and that everyone was trying to support each other and to really get this church kicked off. This building, the small building in the back, was the first building, and we were using that for everything, for worship, for Wednesday night fellowship, for Sunday school, and we had probably 50 members or so by the time I started here. When we were planning this sanctuary, we thought it would be very good to have stained glass windows. As with any building project, you start to get over budget by the time you add in all the things that you would really like to have, and you really want to make it nice and respectful and worshipful. And we were to the point that we did not feel that we could afford to have the stained glass windows put in initially, so we were going to have plain glass put in with the framework set up so that stained glass windows could be added later. And what happened was, when the appeal was put out that we would start a fund for stained glass windows, and when the fund was high enough that they could be afforded, that they would be installed. And just within a few weeks' time, people stepped forward and donated the money to have the windows put in, so they were all put in with the initial installation. I was fortunate enough to meet my husband at this church. We met in a single Sunday school class. Turns out that within a year, probably everybody in the singles class either married each other or married other people, so the class sort of dissolved. But he had started coming to the church maybe a year or so earlier, and I think God put us in this place together. We've been married 9 years just next week, and it has really been an important part of our lives, and he's become a lot more involved with the church. He did not grow up in the church, but through our involvement together, he has grown spiritually as well.
The reason we came here, because I'm a lifelong Methodist, and when we moved back here after I retired from the Marine Corps in 1995, we came here because it was the closest Methodist church to us that we'd seen. And we were in the old sanctuary at that time. And we sat down in a pew about in the middle of the church, and immediately someone walked up to us. It was Laura Beck, actually, and introduced herself to us, welcomed us, sat down next to us, talked and stayed with us, after the service. And that's one of the things I think that will keep people coming back, is a welcoming environment. Our new sanctuary building project started originally back in before we actually came here, and they had some problems with that, and it kind of ground to a halt. And in 1996, an attempt was made to start that back up again. We organized a building committee again, and that was really the initiative of the pastor, Carl Dickerson, is the one who got that ball rolling again after he'd been here probably a year. And we started this building committee, first met in January of 1997. Each piece of the project we wanted to be as much as we could do here at St. Luke. We wanted to build the sanctuary that would last us, we thought. What we tried to do was to involve the entire church in that, to get opinions from everybody on what we should do and how we should go about doing it, what it should be like, what it ought to look like. And we were fortunate enough to engage an architect who's experienced at church building, experienced with working with building committees and churches and things like that. And he came over here, and as a matter of fact, before we interviewed him the first time, he came over and sat out in the parking lot one Sunday morning and watched people come and go. And when he came to the first interview, he said, quite honestly, as it turns out, "I know what you need to do, and I know how to help you do it." And he didn't say it bombastically or anything, just as a matter of fact. We ended up engaging him, and sure enough, he did. It's interesting now because the church has kind of evolved, and it's been a kind of a natural thing almost into a mission kind of a church, because we have missions now that work not only locally here, outreach kind of missions, but also in South America and in Kentucky, and the youth group is in the Bahamas teaching Vacation Bible School, or just finished that. And I think that, if that interest prevails, that may be the future direction of the church, is more outreach to people outside of our community and our congregation.
I tell you what, I think St. Luke is #1 in this city for mission outreach, and I think their hearts are just so giving that they want to do more and more for the community in other countries, as well as the community right at our back door. 13 years ago, we did some things in the community, but in the past, I would say 10 years, we started really reaching out to programs throughout the community. And I know Mavis Oliver was one of our leaders with this mission program, and she started talking about more and more mission work, and they decided to try a Costa Rican mission. And that song, Do You Hear Me Calling in the Night? We kept hearing it in church and hearing it in church. This was our first real outreach and in another country, and I just felt compelled to say, I want to try this. I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, but I decided I would try it, and I had the most glorious, rewarding time in that country. We've come a long way from 13 years ago. The youth group was small then. When Reverend Dickerson got here, I met with him and I was concerned about the youth group. And he said, why don't we have a full-time youth pastor? And I went, I don't know. And he said, I think we can make it happen. And through various meetings, we have made that happen. And the youth group has grown. They have taken many mission trips. I was able to go to one mission trip over in inner city Mobile, and we painted houses of people who are not fortunate to be able to keep up with their homes. And the youth got in. We had prayer group. In the evening, we had just a very, very special time as we worked with this project. And we were only there for maybe 4 days, but the youth learned that they could be of service to a community. Well, I think we've tried to reach out to the people, give them what they want, different programs that they want. We haven't had our contemporary service for very long, but once we started that, we're reaching out to all kinds of people that really don't want to get dressed up that much in the morning. And we've looked at different programs that we could offer people in the community and tried to reach to those people.
I think that people who are on the receiving end of that outreach say, wow, you know, these people have a really big heart and they're so kind and they do so much for others. I want to be a part of that. And then I think it's the same for those who don't know, who are not on the receiving end, but they come, you know, to church and they see. I mean, that's how we got so involved. You know, my husband, you know, grew up in a Methodist church and said, we're going to try this church out and we'll go every Sunday for a month and see how we like it. Well, that first Sunday that we came, we walked in and we saw all these sign-up tables, get involved with this, and come join us here and be a part of this group. And we thought, wow, this is a really, you know, exciting and vibrant and active church. And there was a great children's program, and we just thought this was it. So, I mean, now he still made us wait 4 weeks before we actually joined, but we knew after that first Sunday. I think it's just going to increase. I mean, we are already recognized so much in our community because of, and I just think that, you know, the more that people see that, you know, the more that they'll come and want to be part of that.
The prayer garden actually started about 15 years ago. We dedicated the area, and it has changed totally 3 times. And when this building was built, it created a center area, and we turned that into a prayer garden on one side so that you walk through it. It starts with a story of the Bible, emphasizing Moses at the beginning and Christ at the end, and we are adding to it. The discipleship program has been occasional program until we had the 40 Days of Purpose, and then it became something that 2 of us decided that the church needed and that was what we wanted to do. So the other lady did one at 8:15, I do one at 9:30 and one on Wednesday night. And it's a study of the Bible. You start from the beginning, and it's typically set up to do a lesson each week for 2 hours, but we changed it to an hour a time, and so it takes us 2 weeks to do a lesson. And I think this really helps with busy people. They have time to read it and think about it and rethink it for the next week. And we are almost finished with the first group, and I think it's made a big difference. I've already seen people change. We just won a grant from Igniting Ministries to put a two-sided electronic sign out front, and we want to bring the community in more growth in numbers, but also in being able to lead those people to growth in Christ and then reaching out to the world through that.
I've had the privilege of being the pastor of St. Luke a little more than half our history. I'm in my 11th year. Being pastor of a church in 11 years, you get the opportunity and the privilege to see the growth, to see the changes, to be involved in the people's lives over the year, to see the children grow up. It's just very, very rewarding. And it's been extremely rewarding to see how St. Luke's grown during these 11 years and the positive changes that it's made among the community itself and in the community of Pensacola. The reasons I think the church has grown is it's focused outwardly in mission and ministry to the community. I think if the church is focused inwardly, they stagnate and die. St. Luke is a very outwardly focused church. It's focused on making a difference in the Pensacola area, in the Inslee area, and around the world. It gives people an opportunity to be involved in service, and that's important in one's Christian faith. It invites people to be able to put their faith into practice in concrete ways, in ways that make a visible difference. And that's rewarding, and I think people like to be a part of something like that.
At Council of Ministries meetings and administrative board meetings, there are often proposals made for new things that need to be done, but just as often, there's an individual who sees a need for something and starts the ball rolling.
I would say that it doesn't, even if you think deep down in your heart that there's nowhere for you or that you can't contribute anything, that you're wrong, that there is something, somewhere. It doesn't have to be teaching. It doesn't have to be family ministries. It doesn't have to be planning events. It can be as simple as, you know, helping to decorate the fellowship hall for a Wednesday night dinner.
This church has unlimited possibilities. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This church could be the flagship of Methodism in Pensacola once it really makes traction and starts growing.
I think that what people would see and feel from this church are the passion that this church has for mission outreach to the community, and also, again, the caring that the people have for each other.